And I want you to know up front is that, to me, complex trauma, when a child lives in constant danger, it ends up with them believing hundreds of lies because their experience with unsafe people says that to do healthy things is actually going to lead to hurt. So to do healthy things, therefore, is bad. So they believe thousands of lies and about that healthy things are bad. And then they have to do survival things that basically are maladaptations. So they got to lie, they got to manipulate, but they seem to work. So they're believing lies that those things are actually good. And so much of reparenting complex trauma is beginning to be aware of these many, many lies that have existed, often in the subconscious. And the first thing I want you to realize is, so a child learns in complex trauma that being authentic leads to pain. So authenticity is bad. What they don't factor in is being authentic with unsafe people results in pain. They don't hear or know from experience that being authentic with safe people leads to joy and connection and a wonderful life. They don't factor in the safe versus the unsafe people. They only, in their mind, is authenticity equals rejection and pain. And so lies come out of having to survive with unsafe people. But let me go beyond some of that and just look at all the different ways that lies become believed when you live in a complex trauma environment. So first of all, many are told lies right from childhood. So you're useless, you're fat, you're ugly, you'll never amount to anything, you're a burden, you can't do anything right, you're selfish, you think only of yourself. And so they just hear that constantly. They're inundated with those messages and they believe them. But they're lies. It's their parents have issues. Their parents have the whole wrong value system. Secondly, they get lies from parents with wrong value systems who become wrong role models. So their parents think their value comes from lots of money, a promotion, big job. So they are workaholics. They work, or they have the perfect body and all their emphasis is on their image. And so the child learns that. They have parents who are poor role models when it comes to coping. So they're parents who are overeating, shopping all the time, all kinds of unhealthy ways of trying to escape the stresses of life, to medicate their pain. And the child learns that and thinks it must be the right way to live. That's a lie. So what I talked about at the beginning is the third way a child gets lies, and that's kind of what I call complex trauma math that comes out of the experience of living with unsafe people. So we talked about, if I'm authentic, I get rejected, therefore authenticity is bad. So 2 + 2 in their mind equals 5. They don't factor in that this is only with unsafe people. Also, what happens when you're with unsafe people? If I share all of my emotions, I get punished. So if I cry, I get punished. If I show fear, I get punished. If I'm sensitive, I get punished. If I'm an introvert, I get punished. So any emotion that makes me vulnerable, that would be perceived as weak, is bad. So that comes out of the math of complex trauma. And so now, what does it lead them to? Emotions need to be stuffed. They need to be repressed. You can't resolve emotions. You can't talk about emotions. You can't express emotions. Emotions are mainly just pain that leads to more pain. So get rid of emotions, stuff emotions. That's a good thing. And so that comes out of complex trauma. We're going to go into more of that in a little while. But other elements within growing up in complex trauma is often you get validated for the wrong things. So you get validated because you're a hard worker, because you please people well, because you're very cooperative, because you're pretty, because you're smart, because you're good at sports. And so now you believe that your value comes from these things, not from who you are. That's a lie. Then, for a person who's the authority figures of their life have basically all been abusive, neglectful, can't be trusted, a child begins to distrust authority figures, to be defiant of those in authority. And so now they don't have wise guides to help them learn truth. They just have their limbic brain. And what's their limbic brain? Well, I want instant gratification. And so if I got to work at something, even though there might be good consequences down the road, I'm not even going to consider that. I just want instant fun. I want it to give instant pleasure, to feel good now. Well, that leads to all kinds of wrong conclusions about life, to believing lies about life. Then they start to believe that the only solution to all the guilt that they're being made to feel, false guilt, true guilt, they got to lie, they're being told they're fat, they're lazy, they're selfish. They can't resolve that guilt. They don't know what to do with it. So they begin to believe, just harden yourself. That's the best way to be. That takes the pain of a guilty conscience away. And so now the belief that a hardened heart is the safest heart, is the best way to live. And then we talked about you can't resolve your emotions. You can't talk about your emotions. So the best way to deal with emotions is to repress emotions. Escape into your mind. Just live in your brain. That's all you need. But it goes further for some. If the pain of your life is too great, you can't resolve it. Your brain goes, well, let's deny it. Let's minimize it. Let's not use the brain to look for truth. Let's use the brain to dissociate from truth, to deny truth, to avoid truth. That sets you up to believe all kinds of lies. And then, for many children in complex trauma, if telling the truth causes you to get punished even more, well, let's learn to lie in order to protect ourselves, because we don't have just sympathetic, understanding parents. We've got harsh, punitive parents who are unjust, who don't care about finding out the facts. So let's learn to lie. So now lying becomes part of life, a necessary part of life. And then if nobody in your family is concerned about the elephant in the room and talking about real stuff and being honest, and everybody's protecting secrets, and everybody's distorting reality and blaming somebody else and minimizing people's pain, well, we live in a world that everything's a half-truth, everything's a distortion, the truth can't be tolerated. So you're just surrounded by white lies, big lies, exaggerations. That is what you live with. So let's start with some of the things that happens in a child. Number one, you lie when it's just as easy to tell the truth, because there's a better chance of staying safe if you lie than if you tell the truth. But more than that, when you're surrounded by lies, something deep in you learns you can't trust people, because everybody lies. This is dishonest, and you have to have honesty to have trust. So trust is shattered in relationships. But you also are taught that if you believe all these lies and you tell lies, that good results will come. So lies are a good thing. You don't see that 20 years down the road, they're going to destroy relationships. They're going to hold you in bondage and keep you unhealthy. Because to the limbic brain of a child, this is all good. What you also don't realize is that the longer you live with lies and believe lies and tell lies, they move to the subconscious mind. So you're not even aware that you're believing lies anymore. They just are there, and you operate by them as if they're the truth. What many people need to realize is what happens when a child is lied to, when nobody's talking about the elephant in the room, when people are distorting what they can see plainly in front of them and saying, no, that's not the way it is, this is the way it is, they're being gaslit. They're being gaslit to believe that a lie is the truth, that a distortion is the truth. That means they're being told to doubt their own perception, to doubt their own thinking, to doubt their own intuition, to doubt their own conscience. So part of what's happening in complex trauma is not just are you surrounded with lies and all of that, but you're doubting your own ability to perceive the truth, to think through the truth, to observe and analyze the facts. And so you're slowly being made more and more vulnerable to just accepting somebody else's perception, somebody else's lies. What is also very significant from complex trauma is that sometimes lies end up holding the most power in a person's life. Nothing influences them more, controls them more than a lie. So let's say authenticity leads to rejection and pain. That caused the deepest pain in the child's heart. They felt abandoned. They felt rejected. They felt not good enough. They felt that nobody would ever want them. They felt lonely. That's a deep, deep pain. And so now that lie, authenticity leads to rejection and pain, controls them. They are not going to let anybody close. They are not going to try connecting with anybody. And so now they are setting themselves up for ongoing pain without even realizing it. They think they're trying to keep themselves safe, but they're actually now in bondage to a lie that's going to lead to more pain. Think of it too, when a person ends up believing I'm not good enough, that's why I was rejected, that's why I couldn't be authentic, that's why people abandoned me and abused me. Now when somebody says something nice to them, they go, oh, they don't really mean that. They're just saying that because they don't know me. They're just saying that to be nice. So now they have a lie at the core, but now they have a system around that lie to protect it so that they never challenge the lie. So if somebody's nice to them, I've got a way to explain that away so that I hang on to this core lie that I'm not even aware that I believe it. I don't even put it into words, but it's there at the core of my being. And I hope you see it keeps you in bondage. It keeps you in a prison. So that's why I want you to see that complex trauma leads to a whole bunch of these core lies that came out of deep, painful experiences with unsafe people. And so recovery is a battlefield in the mind. There's other aspects of recovery that are super important to understand. But one of the key aspects to recovery is the mind. Replacing lies with the truth. Understanding the lies that I am believing that I wasn't even aware of. And then replacing it with the truth. That is a battlefield for many, many people. So for the rest of the time today, let me just talk about some of the complex trauma math that develops around emotions and the lies that children begin to believe about emotions. So number one, emotions are unnecessary. Emotions, you can't resolve them. They're only painful. So if you can't resolve them, you just end up with more and more painful emotions. They're just too messy. They get me in trouble. They get me judged. They get me punished. Who needs emotions? Emotions are just unnecessary. And that's where some people go. The truth is, emotions have a very important purpose in our life. Emotions add to the beauty of life. They enrich life. The purpose of emotions is they report to us on what's happening in our outside world, what's happening in our thought life. They are like the lights on a dashboard. They're telling us what's happening below the surface under the hood. And so if the light on the dashboard lights up, you don't say bad light. That's a terrible thing. You're unnecessary. You go, oh, what are you trying to tell me? You're reporting to me something else is going on here that's caused you to light up. So emotions are a great alert system, an information system of what is happening in the rest of my life. But let me take that a little bit further. A subtle lie that comes out for many people from complex trauma is, emotions are mainly good, but some emotions are only bad. And so anger, that's always bad. That's a bad emotion. It's never a good emotion. Crying is always a bad emotion. Fear is always a bad emotion. Anxiety is always a bad emotion. The truth is, emotions are neutral. Emotions are reporting what's going on. And so sometimes they report a positive feeling. That's what we call positive emotion. Sometimes they report a negative feeling. We call it a negative emotion. They're not bad emotions. Some just feel better than others, but they all are reporting to us. And so the negative emotions are reporting something bad is happening. The good emotions are reporting something good is happening. Where all of this comes from is that in many complex trauma families, parents would only allow you and reward you and validate you if you express the positive emotions. You were happy, you were funny. But if you experienced a negative emotion, fear, anger, depression, crying, you got punished for that. You were told you're bad for having that. They might have allowed you to experience it for an hour or a day, but you better be over it quickly. And if you're not over it quickly, then you're a bad person for continuing to have that emotion. You're just feeling sorry for yourself. You're just an angry person. You need to just get over it. So they wouldn't allow you to sit with an uncomfortable emotion because it made them uncomfortable. And so they labeled it as bad, and people believe it. And that is such a sad, sad thing. Some people believe another subtle lie around anger. Not only do they say it's bad, but some then go to, I don't have anger issues. Probably the truth of the matter is two things. They've repressed their anger so much they're not even aware they have it. Secondly, they think that only people that have explosive anger and lash out are angry people. What I want you to see is that there's different types of anger. We can have very subtle anger at ourselves, a strong internal critic that puts ourselves down. We can have passive-aggressive anger, where we use sarcasm, we take subtle shots, we pout, we withhold love and give people the silent treatment. Those are all forms of anger that we can deny, that we don't feel as rage, but they're still anger. So be aware of that. Some would go even farther in this whole anger thing, and they go, oh, I'm proud of my anger. My anger is a good thing. Because to them, their anger gives them energy. Their anger keeps them on guard. They don't drop their guard. It gives them a sense of power. It keeps them from feeling other emotions. It keeps them feeling safe because they can intimidate people. People stay away from them. They set boundaries with people. What I want you to understand is there is a healthy anger that we need to be able to express when something violates love. If something violates love or respect or justice, yes, we should be angry, and we need to learn to express that anger properly. But there's a type of anger that's unhealthy, that's designed to hurt others, that's designed to be a weapon or a shield to protect me or to hurt others. Those destroy relationships eventually. Those hurt me internally and health-wise eventually. Now, this whole anger thing can get an even more subtle lie for some people. And that is, if I struggle with hate or resentment or anger or even if I struggle with anxiety or fear or depression, it must mean I'm a bad person. It must mean I'm failing in life. No, we all struggle with powerful emotions. We all have bad days. We all have to deal with anger. We all have to deal with depression and anxiety. The issue is not that you're struggling with an emotion. The issue is how you respond in that struggle. Do you give into it and let you take it to negative tools that are harmful to others and yourself? Or do you respond to that emotion by learning from it, sitting in it, growing through it, responding with healthy tools to it? Then that emotion leads to growth. So just because you feel an emotion and are struggling with it doesn't mean you're failing. It's how you respond that determines whether you're failing or not. Some people, if you were to ask them, do you feel fear? Nope, don't feel fear. Do you feel shame? Nope, don't feel shame. Any guilt? Nope, no guilt. And it's almost like they're so cut off from their emotions that they walk around quite proudly saying, I don't have negative emotions. I'm just happy all the time. I'm just a very happy person. This one to me is really tricky because what happens for most people with complex trauma is you push your negative emotions down so far, you're forced to be happy all the time, that you're not aware of the negative emotions. You do all kinds of things to just have fun and laugh to make that your most predominant emotion, that you don't feel other emotions. But we don't just feel one emotion at a time. It's not just the most predominant emotion that's the only emotion. Most of us are feeling 20, 50 emotions at a time. Some of them are very subtle. Some of them are buried deep, but they're there. They're affecting us. And so everybody has emotions. We can't not have emotions based on whatever circumstances we're in. They will set off different lights on the dashboard. Whether we're aware of them is the issue. It's not that we're not having them. It's whether we're aware of them that's the issue. And so what becomes important for people to realize is I'm having emotions. I've got many, many emotions, not just the predominant one I'm feeling. I need to be able to stop and listen to myself to find out what those other emotions are and be honest about it. That leads to another subtle lie that many believe, and that is not only that I don't feel emotions, but emotions don't affect my behavior. I'm just a cerebral person. I just make decisions based on facts, not based on emotions. My behaviors not affected by emotions, but just healthy thinking. What I want you to understand is our behavior is affected by our thinking and our emotions, and the two go together. Most of us don't realize how much our behavior is affected by our emotions, especially if you come out of complex trauma, because complex trauma causes you to live out of your limbic brain as the powerful part of your brain. And the limbic brain is your emotion center. And so, yes, you might think well, but as soon as your emotions get triggered, fear, stress, anxiety, sadness, anger, you go to behaviors that you can't control just with your thinking. And so you might have pushed your emotions down. You might have gone to your head and think that you're just a cerebral robot that's not affected by emotions. And that might be true some of the time. But when your emotions get triggered, even when you're not feeling them a lot, but it's at a subconscious level, your stress level is increasing, your anxiety is increasing, it starts affecting your behavior. Not just your behavior to others, but how you cope. And it starts leading to unhealthy behaviors. So your emotions do affect your behavior. Now, there's another subtle lie about emotions that comes out of complex trauma, and that is that healthy people are always happy. And sometimes you'll get a version of this in recovery, and that is if you do the hard work of recovery, you end up getting healthy, which means you'll always be happy and you'll never experience negative emotions again. What I want you to understand is healthy people experience all emotions, not just happiness. They feel sadness. They feel grief. They feel anger. They feel anxiety. They just have learned how to resolve them, how to deal with them, how to learn from them. There's going to be some emotions they have to sit in for a little while because they can't resolve it right away. And they've learned to tolerate those emotions and not let them take them to bad, unhealthy behaviors. So understand that being healthy is being fully human, experiencing all of our emotions. Another subtle thing that comes out of complex trauma, and it's a lie that many believe, and that is that others are responsible for my emotions. So you may have grown up hearing your dad say, "You made me angry. It's your fault that I'm angry. I am punishing you because you upset me, and that's on you." And so you believe you're responsible for other people's emotions, so other people might be responsible for your emotions. So if I'm upset, I blame somebody else. It's because you did that. Here's what I want you to understand. When somebody does something, let's say they treat me unfairly or disrespect me, yes, they trigger an emotion in me, but they are not responsible for how I respond to that emotion. They are not responsible for my behavior that then comes out of that emotion. That's on me. So I can't say, "I'm blaming you and it's your fault that I'm hitting you and abusing you now because you made me angry." I can say, "Hey, what you did made me angry, and I need to address that. But now how I respond to my anger is on me. I'm responsible to make sure that is healthy." There's another lie about emotions that comes out of complex trauma, and it's around boredom. And so many children that come out of complex trauma find themselves bored. And they go, "It's because I don't have anything to do, because I don't have any excitement in my life." And so boredom is equated with lack of activity or exciting activities. That's actually probably a lie. Boredom is actually what happens when you can't resolve emotions, and so you repress and suppress all of your emotions, is you just become dead inside. You're trying not to feel negative emotions, but you end up not feeling any emotions, and that feels like boredom. Genuine joy and happiness comes out of connecting with safe people. But if you can't connect with people because they're not safe and you don't have connection, you feel all alone. You feel empty. You feel sadness inside. That feels like boredom. But there's another element of complex trauma. If you've grown up in a certain amount of chaos and constant danger where your sympathetic nervous system is always activated and you got adrenaline pumping all the time and cortisol, as soon as you get into a healthy place where you're safe and you're in your parasympathetic nervous system and there's no cortisol and adrenaline pumping, that feels kind of boring. So healthy actually begins to feel boring. And so what people need to understand is if I'm feeling bored, don't just think it's lack of excitement. That could be, probably is a lie. Look, am I feeling my emotions? Am I connected? And am I actually in a healthy place where my parasympathetic is allowing me to rest? Then another thing that can come out of complex trauma is thinking that it's healthy to express emotions, but to express them any old way I want. And so you might have had a mom who lashed out and tore you apart and got angry in very inappropriate ways. And she said, "Well, you're supposed to feel your anger. That's healthy. I'm just feeling my anger. That's a good thing. Don't criticize me and don't try to shut me down. That's unhealthy." What she's not seeing is, yes, she's right, and she should be feeling her anger and expressing her anger. Where she got it wrong was anger has to be expressed appropriately. Anger has to be expressed in ways that don't hurt other people and violate love. Then that's not healthy anger. That's anger turned unhealthy into unhealthy anger. So I want to feel all my emotions, And I want to express my emotions, but only when it's appropriate. So another way to say that is when I'm feeling strong emotions, they need filters. They need love. So if I'm feeling really, really angry at my spouse, that doesn't mean I can say anything that comes into my head. I still want to be respectful and loving, so I need filters. I need to express my anger appropriately. Then many, because of their complex trauma, have begun to realize that painful emotions, if I sit in them, they just lead to more pain. So if I'm feeling anxiety, probably something bad's going to happen. If I'm feeling fear, something bad's going to happen, and I have no way of resolving it. So instead of waiting for the bad thing to happen before I fight or flight, let's fight or flight as soon as I'm feeling an uncomfortable emotions. And what comes out of that is I never want to sit in an uncomfortable emotion. As soon as I feel an uncomfortable emotion, I'm out of here. Now you come into recovery and you feel an uncomfortable emotion, sadness, some anxiety, some anger, some grief, and I can't handle this, I'm out of here. Two things that people have to realize is that that child, number one, couldn't resolve any of those emotions, so that emotion always did lead to pain, greater pain. You now can resolve most of your uncomfortable emotions. So they're not going to lead to pain. They're going to lead to resolution. They're going to lead to solutions. Secondly, there's some emotions you can't resolve right away. So if you think of grief, if you think of the anxiety you have because you've got an interview next week for a new job and you're a little bit nervous about it, you can't magically just make that go away. You can't just magically make grief go away. Grieving is a lengthy process. You got to sit in that anxiety for a week before you have that interview. So you have to learn to tolerate distressful emotions. And so you can learn tools to help you regulate those emotions, even though they don't go away totally. That's what the goal is. So some emotions you can resolve very quickly. Some you have to learn to sit in, but learn to regulate them properly. Some children growing up in complex trauma develop the belief or heard the lie that if you have a negative emotion, the correct response is just think positively. Oh, you're feeling sad? Oh, just be positive. Think positively. Oh, you're having a bad day? Just think positively. You're really frustrated? Just think positively. There's value in learning to see the positives in a situation without distorting it and not seeing it accurately anymore. But to think that just thinking positively is a magic fix to negative emotions is a lie. Because what happens is you're actually denying the negative emotion. You're not resolving it. You're not processing it. You're not being honest with yourself. You're going into denial. You're going into minimizing. And you can't heal a negative, painful thing unless you're honest and facing it accurately. So just positive thinking doesn't magically just provide a solution to negative emotions. It's actually harmful. It's a lie. So a couple very quickly that some got that came out of complex trauma, which were lies, and that is the way to never experience a painful emotion is not to care about anything. So if you love people deeply, then it hurts more when they die or when they move. So don't care about anybody. So some began to believe that. If you don't care about whether you get good grades in school, then it doesn't hurt if you fail. So don't care about anything. So that became their belief about how to never feel pain. Or some grew up feeling and being told and believing that mental health problems made you weak, made you bad. There was a stigma around mental health problems. There was an embarrassment. We don't talk about these things. They make you a loser. So those, I think, hopefully are obvious lies. But let me just finish by talking about those who do have mental health problems. So depression, anxiety, they bring powerful emotions that bring lies to the limbic brain. So if you grew up in complex trauma with all of these negative emotions that led to these lies, if those negative emotions are triggered today, the lies come back to your limbic brain. So just take depression. You're going along feeling great in life, then depression hits you, and with that emotion comes a whole bunch of lies. I'm useless. There's no hope. I can't handle life. My best behavior is to isolate from people, not to connect with people. My best behavior is to numb, not feel my emotions. My best behavior is to let my responsibilities slide, not to engage. Even people would be better off without me. Those lies just flood in with that powerful emotion. Same is true with intense anxiety. What comes in? What lies? I will fail. I can't handle this. Other people think I'm a loser. I might as well give up. And so with those lies, then the next layer comes. I then become very hard on myself. I beat myself up. I get really negative. I get angry at myself and others. I overreact in situations, or I get even more depressed, even more anxious. All my insecurities come to the surface. I then feel guilty that I'm failing. I'm doing terrible. So that powerful emotion triggers my limbic brain, which triggers a whole bunch of lies, which leads to I even create more pain for myself. It does damage to my relationships. Life gets worse, not better. So, what's the reparenting process look like? Gradually become aware of the thousands of complex trauma lies that came out of faulty complex trauma math from living with unsafe people. But understand, this is a slow process. You don't become aware of these lies that have been buried in your subconscious for years. You don't become aware overnight. It's a very gradual growing self-awareness that takes place in your recovery as you're exposed to more and more situations, that these lies gradually become uncovered. Once you don't necessarily even figure them out. At first you just get triggered and you don't know why you're triggered. And then as you are gracious to yourself and explore those lies, those feelings, you begin to uncover the lies that go with it. So just be aware of some of the triggers that will probably lead to you becoming aware of lies. When you're disrespected, when you're neglected, when you're made to feel stupid, when people don't respect your boundaries, when you fail, when you're criticized. All of those probably are going to lead to powerful emotions. Then stop and go, is there another time in my life when I felt these emotions? Then you might go back to when you were 8 years old. And then go, what am I believing about that 8-year-old? What's that 8-year-old believing about itself? And they go, I'm stupid. Nobody cares about me. I'll never have a friend. Nobody will ever want me. Lie after lie after lie. So go through that. So then there's an intellectual component. The hard work of saying, okay, this is the lie, but this is the truth. I am getting into my cortex, out of my limbic brain, and I am establishing I am valuable. I am worth connection with. And you go through all of that. Emotions are valuable. It's all right to feel emotions. Emotions aren't bad. They don't make me a bad person. And you build all of that. But you don't solve all of this just with intellectual work. There's an action element. So let's just take the shame thing. So you get disrespected, you get angry, but yet deep inside you start to feel I'm not good enough, nobody wants me, I'm a loser. And you can go to your cortex and say, yeah, I have value, but you're still feeling those emotions in your limbic brain and those lies at a deep, deep level. How do you change those lies in the limbic brain? You act your way to changing it. So if somebody's disrespecting you, you stand up for yourself and say, if you're going to keep disrespecting me, I'm going to leave this conversation. Now you're Limbic brain is wanting to go and hide. Your limbic brain is wanting to fight back and argue, but it's feeding the negative lies, the limbic brain. It's when you act your way to standing up for yourself, to expressing your needs, to saying, I do matter, that you begin to change the limbic brain and all of the lies and bring about healing. So that's reparenting some of these complex trauma lies. Now, over the next few weeks, as we look at different matters, we're going to look at the lies that come out of complex trauma about relationships, about coping. You're going to begin to just see, wow, there are a lot of lies that come out of complex trauma. A big part of my healing journey is learning to identify those lies and replace them with the truth. Well, thank you again for being with us. If you found it helpful, like, subscribe, share it with somebody else, make a comment. That just helps the whole algorithm with YouTube.